We founded United World, United Limited, because we saw that a whole bunch of metaverse applications, there's one metaverse and there's a multitude of applications, so just to be clear with that, right? Okay. Like Second Life was one of the applications. We found that a whole lot of applications aren't actually fit for purpose. They are designed with a business-first perspective, and that means that you have a whole lot of spaces with businesses in there but no users, no end users, no consumers. And that partially is a design flaw, because metaverses haven't been designed by women for women. They haven't been truly inclusive. They have a high barrier of entry. They're very complicated, and it needs to be low code, no code, easy to access, and truly inclusive and diverse. And that's why we set out on that journey to create something different.
Yeah, that really rings a bell. I remember when I played that game a long time ago, I only see guys mostly. And actually there was not much interaction also with female or female designer or developer. But perhaps, I believe, a picture worth thousands of words. I know you have some footage to let us visualize your idea, right?
Absolutely.
Shall we?
Yeah, shall we? Sure. Yeah,
please.
Absolutely.
Welcome. The metaverse will change our lives. It will dissolve the boundaries between the virtual and the physical world. But what makes the metaverse? Why isn't it simple enough to transfer existing websites into a 3D world? We are United, and we have been living and working in what is now called the metaverse for many years. We already wore augmented shoes 10 years ago and built 3-dimensional learning journeys. Workshops and events in 3D worlds, aka metaverse, have been normal for us for many years. Today we are building part of the next internet, the metaverse. We are the easiest way for businesses and brands to create and own their presence in the open metaverse. We are the first company to offer concepts that support and promote diversity and inclusion for all people. We don't just love technology. In our experience, it is necessary that it supports all people with different backgrounds and abilities and offer clear added value. We are open source. We create an open metaverse without technical silos, without black boxes, and without closed systems. We are United Open Metaverse, made with love, experience, and lots of sci-fi infusions.
Wow, that video has already shown so much more promising things that I've ever seen before already. So now let's get into the details. You mentioned that you have a very different approach. Can you tell us a bit more how differently and how did you achieve that?
Well, first of all, we believe in open source, right? We think that decentralization and metaverse is much about bringing different technologies together, one of them being blockchain, representing decentralized ideas, and the open source community, they work really well together. You know, having proprietary solutions in silos and a decentralized approach like on the metaverse doesn't really work, that doesn't gel together. So that's something that we do fundamentally different. And also we don't really have any legacy systems, which means that we can really recreate something or create something that is fundamentally different and works and is fit for purpose.
I see, okay. You also mentioned about user-first approach, right? So how do you actually, in practical sense, to focus on the user first?
Well, the users are the end users, they're the humans, right? They're not the companies, they aren't the first ones. If you bring in a company into the metaverse, then you have a really cool shop or something, but you have no people that are there, they don't feel at home. So we need to focus on arts and culture first, that we create a social fabric that people actually can identify with, that you have fan groups with. It can be football, it can be anything, it can be visual arts, etc., right? And then we focus on education, because that's a big part, to be able to actually work and live within the metaverse. And then we bring in the people, give them a home, so that they feel at home in that environment. And only then, when we have traction, when we got users, then we're going to invite companies to then also participate.
Ah, okay, I got it. But I also guess you would talk to the companies as well, right? Because they would not be ignored definitely. So are they the second one, the second step? How is it?
It's actually the last step,
oh, okay.
But there's a huge synchronicity, because the companies nowadays aren't all ready to go into the metaverse. They don't have the capabilities within their organization. They don't understand the value streams. So in the meantime, we're actually smartening them up. We're educating them. We're creating companies' capabilities. And we're looking for the communities to actually then gel them together and match them together.
Ah, okay, now I got it. It just reminds me a long time ago, you know, before the internet bubble, it was, for example, the Instagram, Facebook thing. It all happened with the user, keep sharing the content. It was driven by the user first, right? And then the company adapt to that.
Yes, user-first approach is paramount.
I love it. So what about data? I know that data is kind of a tricky topic in Germany, but since this is also the things that you mentioned a lot, please tell us about how's the data part.
Yeah, you know my background is in data, and that's why I'm very passionate about. And I believe that we left the playing field entirely over to the big American corporations that suck all the data and then give very little back. And I think in the future you need to have a very different approach to data privacy as well as data ownership. Right? So putting that on the blockchain and giving people the ability to manage their own data, also to potentially monetize them, is super important for the future. Because a data set, for example, for a lawyer is worth maybe $5,000 or $6,000 or $7,000. The lawyer doesn't get anything from that.
And so I would like the audience to also know, where are you in the journey so far?
We're in the journey currently at the place where we have selected a few open source tools. We're merging them together. We have created our own spaces. We have created spaces that are differently designed. So we got spaces where a safe space for women is already there. It's built in, for example, so that they don't get harassed when they come into the metaverse like Nina Jane Patel did, for example, when they did and became famous with BBC, right? So we're creating that very differently from the get-go. And we have companies that we're already informing. We have companies like Skoda or other big German companies that we're currently bringing onto the journey and creating the capabilities within their organization. And in the meantime, we're building communities.
Perfect. And I need to stop you there because I have one question already about your answer. You mentioned about safe place for women, right? Can you just guide us a little bit more exactly how is this happening in the 3D virtual world and the metaverse?
It's actually like you would imagine the real world, right? If you have a space that sits slightly outside the other spaces, where you can only access if you're actually identified as that person that has a right to be there. And when you have the data on the blockchain, you can't fake it. You can't pretend to be somebody else. So we have data security and data integrity. You can identify the people so they can get access to these virtual other spaces that look like little bubbles or like separate rooms or something like that, where only the people that belong there can actually go.
Okay, now I totally get it. I think that's a really brilliant idea because I was just wondering how to really implement it because we have all this nice idea how to help people, but sometimes when it comes to implementation, it's a bit hard. I got it now. So further on, what is your ultimate goal with this project here?
The ultimate goal is to create an alternative to the existing data suckers, I'd say, to the people that take in all the data and don't give anything back. The idea is to create a long-term, real alternative where we bring people together and actually where they have an ability to live, learn, and work gradually and then connect with others, like-minded people, right? So that they can be somewhere, can find a virtual home and feel safe and own their own data again, right? And an open source platform is the best solution in our opinion, rather than a proprietary one.
I agree. And can I ask you for some tips? Because I know that on the internet, such a big world, there's always some people who are willing to give more content, contribution, and some are just more a bit silent. And since you mentioned about this wonderful community, is there any tips in that world that you can actually, convince people, for those who are a bit silent, to give more content, to contribute a bit better?
Yeah, the idea is definitely when you have an agency that smartens companies up, that informs folks, right? The idea is then that you create stuff. You create a platform, a marketplace, if you like, where people can put their own designs. So maybe they just contribute an idea, maybe they create something like a garment, like a scarf or a hat, or maybe they create an entire little world, a set of rooms, a studio or what have you, whatever they want. And we can put it on the platform, we can tokenize it, a very technical term, but we can basically create a token out of it so that people can always tap into the value chain. So they don't create it once and it's forgotten, but they can always, when it's getting resold, repurposed, they can always tap into the value chain or they can rent it out. So they can do entirely different things with their assets. So we're inviting the creator community very much so.
I like this approach. So now, almost the last question, as I promised, and I want to ask something a bit more spicy because I know that not every single audience are buying into this metaverse trend, and I really like to have your personal opinion. So with this concern about data and your new approach, which is really perfect, so with this new ideology from you, with the technology, we can build a better metaverse, the 3D world. So with that, how can we better contribute to the real world as well?
Back to the real world, it's going to be augmented, right? It's not going to be just an either or, it's going to all mesh together. And I think over time we'll see lots of solutions that create an augmented reality where you can actually take some of the value from the metaverse that you create and put it in your pocket. You can earn money, real life money with it, right? You can further your career because you have different opportunities to listen and to learn, to educate yourself. So I think there's a whole lot of value in it for everyone. And forget the term metaverse for a second, it's the new internet, right? And so everything you can do now, you can do times X in the future in the metaverse. So it is a thing that's going to come, that's going to happen, and we can shape it right now.